Please welcome Jim Gavin and Manuel Gonzalez.
This feels like Simon and Garfunkel here.
Hello,
I'm
darkness,
Simon.
my old friend. You're Simon?
Yeah.
I don't think that's
Yeah. Before Manuel reads, I thought I would say a few words about his writing. I'm just going to read a random passage without any context. See if I can find it. This is from his new novel. Thank you for coming out to hear me read Manuel. This paper, hoping to offer a more nuanced and complete consideration of the regional office, will assign the beginning of the regional office to the accident that should have killed Oyemi but didn't. The accident that didn't kill her, but in fact imbued her with mystical properties. The accident that happened on a Tuesday at or near IKEA. So, I know that is a representative passage. I think a mark of a writer, you hear terms like style and voice, but if that passage was like spray painted on a wall somewhere, I would know that Manuel had written it. It has that certain sinister tranquility in the voice. There's an almost highly rational, institutional quality to the voice while describing something absolutely fucking bonkers. Plus the mixture of a kind of high and low that I've seen throughout his fiction, but I think it's especially here in this novel a kind of dexterity with both literature and pop culture. I got to know his stories. Our collections came out at the same time, and the first sentence of his collection, I think it's one of those books where you read that and you can't not buy the book. His stories are often described as strange or surreal, imaginative, and they seem to exist at a certain point of just to the side of the reality that we know, and there's usually just like one kind of turn that allows a kind of really exciting mode of storytelling, and they're also really hilarious. So I just wanted to introduce Manuel that way. He's a good pal, and I'm excited to hear him read. So thank you.
Thanks. Hi. I'm going to read from this far into the book. So I'm going to give you a very little bit of setup before I read. The regional office is a secret organization that trains at-risk young women to fight the forces of darkness as they threaten the planet. And one day it is under attack, as the title implies.
Yeah, that's in the title.
I'm very literal with my titles. The Miniature Wife is about a miniature wife. But what I'm going to read from, so there are two sides to the story. It follows the character Rose, who's one of the people who was perpetrating the attack, and the character Sarah, who works for the regional office and is trying to defend it. But this section takes place 10 years after the attack. And it follows Rose, more or less. And that's all I'll tell you. Oh, except for that I have been told that it's... I've been told by me, I said this once at a speech before reading it, that it's basically my take of the Reese Witherspoon classic, Sweet Home Alabama, but with robots. So, Rose hadn't been told there'd be a robot. I wasn't lying. It's robots. That hadn't been in any of the literature, hadn't been part of any assassin training camp seminars or lectures, hadn't been part of any post-regional office debrief. Not that she'd gotten any real post-regional office debriefing. Everyone had somehow failed to mention that one day, 10 years into her future, 10 years after the attack on the regional office, a robot would show up hell-bent on ruining her life, not to mention killing her for all that regional office bullshit. 10 fucking years. Jesus, a long fucking time. They waited a long fucking time for her revenge. Not that she was bitter that no one had told her about there being a fucking robot. Not that she cared that the men and women she had trained with those years ago, had assaulted the regional office with, had all but completely fallen off the face of the earth. But Jesus Christ. Was it too much to expect a card at Christmas? A phone call on her birthday, forwarding information and a new phone number just in case, oh, who knows, a fucking robot stomped into her fucking yarn and bead shop and started tearing shit all to hell? It swung its robot arm at her. She pivoted, grabbed it by that same arm, heaved it through the wall, except that how that actually transpired went more like it grabbed her by her face and smashed her head through the cash register. Fucking robots. Rose had often pictured them coming in here, the people who recruited her, Henry and Emma. Not right at that moment, though. God, what a fucking embarrassment that would have been if those two showed up just as she was getting her ass handed to her by some 2-bit looking robot that wasn't even fully covered in synthetic skin. No. If it were a choice between suffering a painful and brutal death at the hands of this crusher or suffering that kind of embarrassment in front of Henry or Emma, Rose would take the painful and brutal death every time, friend, and thank you very much. Not that she hadn't pictured that moment, though, that awkward and awful reunion. The bell over the door would tinkle. She wouldn't look up, not right away, even though she would know it was them, would sense it in her skin. Maybe Henry would clear his throat, or Emma would say, "Hello, dear," the way she did, and Rose would look up and smile at them briefly, just so they knew that she knew they were there and that something was in store for them. She would offer them something to drink, some cookies maybe, because for whatever fucking reason, whenever she pictured this moment, she pictured herself in it, having just baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies. They would catch up on what was new and relive old times, and then just when they were comfortable, just when the last tattered shreds of awkwardness and discomfort had fallen away, bam, she'd pull out the banker box of files she kept in her storage closet, throw that shit on the table in between the two of them, and then yell at them, 10, there are 10 more fucking boxes just like this one. Then she'd pull out a file, it wouldn't matter which one, and open it up and read from the top. Subject suffers violent and debilitating nightmares. Subject often uses sex as a weapon. Subject suffers from deep trust issues. No shit, Sherlock, she would say. That's the thing about being the subject who was abducted when you were fucking 16 and trained to be a superpowered assassin with the promise that you'll help save the world when really, all you're doing is settling a fucking score. Subject is often violent to herself and others. Subject often lies for no apparent reason. She could go on. She would go on. She would go on and on and on. She kept all the receipts, too. Every therapist visit, every prescription filled ever since the attack on the regional office, just in case. She had the receipts taped to individual sheets of blank paper, all professional and shit, and then tabulated in a spreadsheet. A highlighted spreadsheet. She had all of this ready for the day that one of those assholes showed up. Not that they ever would, but had it just the same, neatly organized, and then, stapled to the front, a 15-page itemized bill. And at the bottom of that bill, in all caps and in red, next to the line, total due, she'd stamped, "You owe me my life back, you fuckers." She'd ordered that stamp specially made online. She'd pictured this moment often, the banker's box, the invoice. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make it feel as delicious a moment as she wanted it to be when she imagined it happening. A failure of her weak imagination, maybe. Or maybe she just knew them too well, knew that they wouldn't care. They wouldn't even fucking apologize. They weren't the type. There'd be no, "Sorry, we took you from the life that you knew, from your family, from your friends. Sorry, we whisked you away and made promises." So many goddamn promises, all of which we failed to keep. No, "Sorry, we made you cut that one dude in half, that you still think of him from time to time, wonder about his family, whether he had one, what they might have been told about him, how he died. Sorry, you can't stop picturing the stunned look in his eye." They would justify. That's who they were. She'd wanted to leave the life she'd been living, they would remind her. She'd wanted to get away from her dumb and neglectful father, her overbearing and angry mother, her pitiful and untempered sister. She'd hated her friends, hated her hometown. She'd hated her life. She had told them so herself. They came for her just when she needed them most. And what about those promises? What about what they gave her, the training, the powers they helped her discover within herself, helped her unleash and hone, the adventure, the thrills? Not to mention she'd been paid handsomely. She'd been offered work at after the regional office job. She'd been offered a new life if she'd wanted it, an apartment in Biarritz, a new name, a new way forward, and she chose. She chose the life she chose. They had done everything they said they would. They had molded her, taught her a craft, and then watch her become so very, very good at it. Could she give them that at least? And yes, she could give them that at least. She was very good at what they trained her to be, but so what? So what if she was good at this thing? It wasn't her life. It wasn't the life she thought she'd wanted. It wasn't the life she was supposed to live. Not to mention, they broke her fucking heart. She couldn't help but think that the whole robot thing seemed just so dated. The whole fucking enterprise just seemed so dated to her now. Cold-hearted revenge, comeuppance for crimes she'd committed in her past, etc., and so on. Not that the robot looked dated, it looked sleek and ultra-modern and kind of feminine, kind of like a girl. Although every robot that wasn't sheathed in some kind of human-like skin, and this one wasn't, reminded her of RoboCop. Even the sleek, newer-looking ones. Maybe that was the new thing with robot design, though, some hipster kind of return to the retro. No more hiding the robot bits underneath synthetic skin and wigs and clothes, less T-1000 from Terminator and more Maximilian from the Black Hole or B-9 from Lost in Space. It was sad, really, that she thought. This whole fucking thing would have been easier to swallow if Rutger Hauer were on the other end of this battle to the death. Jesus, Rutger Hauer, where the fuck was her head? She couldn't focus on one line of pop cultural reference, much less concentrate on not being smashed by a robotic fist. Still, it was weird to think, wasn't it, that there could be Rutger Hauer, bad sci-fi movies like Lost in Space, small, quaint bead and yarn shops in small, quaint Texas towns, and still be towering robots hell-bent on death and destruction? Or rather, the other way around. The robot first and still all those other normal things. She'd spent these past few years caught in a limbo between constantly thinking about and completely forgetting about all that had happened to her, but had finally begun to edge ever so slightly in favor of forgetting. And now this fucking robot beast showed up. It wouldn't stop swinging at her, or throwing shit at her, or grabbing her by her shoulder or ankle or wrist and slamming her into things, for one. Then to make matters worse, the fucking thing wouldn't shut up. It just kept talking, and in a strange voice, strange for a robot anyway, not the kind of voice she'd have expected a robot to have. Rose would have expected something like the robot voice of Stephen Hawking, but this was just like a person. Or not even just a person, but maybe like a girl's voice. And for a second, Rose wondered if the robot was a girl robot, and then, if there was such a thing, a girl robot with girl robot parts. But then it wouldn't shut up or stop swinging at her, and whatever it was just like anybody else. Just as nonstop, just as goddamn annoying. It kept saying things like, leave it to them to train you just enough to get you into trouble, as it wrenched a bank of cabinets out of the floor and then hefted it over its head, finishing with, but not enough to get you out, as it heaved the whole thing at Rose. She saw this coming, but then the robot must have seen her see it coming and calibrated its throw in such a way that, even though Rose jumped out of the way, it clipped her hard in the shoulder and spun her in midair like a spinning coin. And it said things like, was it worth it, while holding up a skein of yarn. All of this, it asked, is all of this worth the things you did, the lives you ruined, the people you destroyed, the work you unraveled, for this? Said that, or something like it, just before shoving the cabinet of alpaca yarn, go alpaca, you'll never go backa, toppling to the floor. This shitty little yarn shop in the middle of this shitty little town, was it worth that? It was a high-quality yarn shop. Thank you very much. In, yes, an admittedly shitty little town, but even still, that wasn't her whole life. She had a dog, a big, gray, lazy Great Dane named Birdie, and a boyfriend. I have a boyfriend now, too, Rose wanted to say, almost said, clamped her mouth shut just before saying. Not that the fucking robot would want to know or care, but his name was Jason, thank you very much. And they'd been gun dating just after her roof started leaking, and she'd hired him to fix the leak. And sure, he kept trying to get people to call him Jace, despite all the time she told him to stop doing that. That he was making a fool of himself, but also of her just by association, which she was beginning to suspect only made him want to try even harder. And sure, just this past weekend, right as shit started getting hot and heavy across the bench seat of his pickup, he'd screech things to a halt by asking her, "So, what is this? Am I your boyfriend or what?" And she'd curbed her serious desire to headbutt him and instead told him, "Christ, grow a pair, would you?" Not to mention, she'd known him way back in middle school when he'd had a total crush on her. And God, now that she was thinking about it, could he be more pathetic? Jesus, if she got out of this mess with the robot, when, she corrected herself, when she got out of this mess with the robot, the first thing she would do would be to break up with Jason. That was the goddamn truth. Except he was funny and really cute and a good fuck, and when it came right down to it, she couldn't get enough of that boy, even just sitting together on his couch watching DIY shit on the TV and scarfing down fucking lime chili Cheetos, or going at it like horny fucking teenagers every chance they got. And every minute of every day, she worried he'd find out who or what she was, and when he did, he'd be the one to leave her. And God, she thought, what if he came over now? What if he chose now to surprise her with lunch or cookies or just to say hi? No, oh, no, 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 no. The robot swung its fucking robot arm, and Rose didn't duck, didn't leap, didn't sway. She grabbed the thing and rolled back, absorbing its momentum, using it against itself, and pivoted at the last possible second, throwing it, the arm and the robot, head over ass back into the wall, because fuck if this robot was going to ruin the one good thing she had. And then the robot smiled. It stood and turned and smiled, damn it. "Well, well," it said in its non-Stephen Hawking voice. "Look who finally woke up." And that's where I'll stop. My mouth was really dry for that one for some reason.
It was
It's the Santa Ana winds.
Yeah. I wrote down some questions for you.
Oh, I wrote down some answers. Let's see if they're the same.
Where do you get your ideas?
I steal them from students I teach.
I've noticed, I recently had a writing conference, and there seemed to be a set of questions. The person would give a long, rambling, self-referential thesis statement and kind of show off the whole range of their knowledge, and then turn to the person and say, "Can you talk to that?" So I'll start it that way. I read in an interview with you that you described your childhood as idyllic.
It was
suburban, idyllic. And I was thinking of and I was trying to match that with some of your stories and the mode of your stories, and I remember a quote from J.G. Ballard, which I'll read aloud for everyone's edification. "Actually, the suburbs are far more sinister places than most city dwellers imagine. Their very blandness forces the imagination into new areas. I mean, one's got to get up in the morning thinking of a deviant act merely to make certain of one's freedom. It needn't be much. Kicking the dog will do." So could you talk to that?
It's true. So not only did I grow up in an idyllic kind of suburb of Dallas, although it had its own dark side. When I was in elementary school, I think it was the suicide capital of the world, and then for a while, right after I graduated high school, it was the black heroin capital of the world. So it's got its dark side. But so not only did I grow up, though, in this kind of Edward Scissorhandian, like perfect lawns, nice houses, I also grew up Catholic and would go to church all the time, which is just as boring as being in a suburb of Dallas all the time. And I remember whenever I was at church, I would just imagine what would happen if, like, marauders stormed the church, and how I would get out of the situation. And then also, it was a weird building. It had these little divots that were regularly spaced in all of the walls, and I always imagined that they were bullet holes, probably from the marauders that stormed the church. So yeah, I think that, I don't know, you're in a suburb, nothing happens. You have to invent just about whatever you want to happen. And so it leaves you a lot of time for invention, I guess. Mm-hmm. Also, I murdered people when I was young.
Yeah. Also.
I mean, I'm sure that has nothing to do with it.
All right. see. What else do I want to go with here? Well, in the section you read, I guess imagining that environment, and there's a wish to escape that environment. Or, I think like Robert Louis Stevenson says something like every child's greatest wish is to be in mortal danger or something,
right.
And a lot of the reference points in the book, which are you totally wear on your sleeve, are like Wrinkle in Time, Time Bandits. It's throughout, and I mentioned a couple there. I'm just curious, are you, your relationship to those types of movies as a kid, and the way you are kind of paying homage to them in the book? So talk to that.
Sure. So I am paying homage to movies that I grew up with as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Fuck you. Fuck you.
No. Yeah, they're just... like my dad, I feel like I said this a lot, and so I'm sorry if you've read this somewhere, but my dad watched a lot of really bad sci-fi adventure movies, and I would watch them with him, not knowing how bad they were. My favorite being The Day of the Triffids, which I don't know if anybody's seen The Day of the Triffids. It's holler. It's about an alien invasion, if I remember correctly, where the aliens are these walking deadly plants, except for their one fatal flaw is salt water, which maybe they should have done. They should have done their research. They should have sent an advance team. Oh, Carl never came back. Maybe we shouldn't go to planet Earth. What if that's what their names were, Carl? But I loved I just have a very fond memory of all of them, and I remember like being mortally afraid of Maximilian from the black hole, and also getting into an argument with my copy editor, who said that there was no such character in the black hole as Maximilian, and I finally realized it's because there was not an actor in that suit. It was just a thing, so there was never a credit for Maximilian, and that's probably why he's so mad in the movie. But I just all those things kind of just sat with me, and that was what I would read too. I instead of reading Moby Dick, I read The Godfather and The Three Musketeers and any other fantasy book. Not that those are fantasy books, I know the difference, but any fantasy book that I just also could come across and read. And then when I got to college, all of that was kind of shoved out of the way for Milton and Shakespeare and Faulkner and Garcia Marquez and like Toni Morrison, who are all fine writers. But when I tried to write in that vein without any of that stuff from my childhood in it, I found myself very bored by it, or it felt very derivative. And so it came more to life for me when I started inserting all that stuff that I liked as a kid.
So when did that happen? Like at what point in your writing life?
That happened when I was in graduate school, and actually the weirdness happened when I was in graduate school. The actual tropes of the things that I loved growing up happened after graduate school, but inserting weird moments. The first story I remember really being happy about, the first half of it anyway, and that happiness matched by the workshop itself, and what people responded to was a story that I wrote about this guy who decided that he and his wife expressed their sexual desires to each other by the clothes that they wore. And so he would wear certain clothes, and he would read the clothes that she wore in certain ways, and then that spilled over into just normal everyday life. And so they didn't talk to each other for 2 years, which is when she finally left him because they weren't talking to each other with their clothes. That guy was just an idiot, and he was batshit crazy. And that was a lot of fun to write. Yeah. But then I got nervous halfway through, and I downshifted it into a more normal kind of short story, lecherous man narrative. And everybody in the workshop, that old saw, which actually is totally an old saw, the lecherous man. everybody was like, the first half of this was really interesting and exciting and unlike anything that we'd seen, and then it kind of just downshifted, and I was like, well, that was the part that I enjoyed writing the most, and I think it was because of how weird it was, and so I kind of just kept pushing forward, and then slowly I allowed fantasy and sci-fi tropes to come in too.
So there was a period when you were like felt obliged to write more realist.
Yeah, realist and boring, really boring stories. Not because realism is boring. Realism can be really good. Your collection is wholly realist.
I wasn't fishing for compliments. Thank you.
Jim always fishing for fucking compliments. We love you, Jim. Fuck it, whatever. But like, and Deborah Eisenberg writes in a very realist vein, and her stories are some of my favorite short stories. It's just that I became bored with my own writing when I was in that. I wasn't able to do anything that stretched the realism in a way that made it interesting to me, which is probably a weakness. It's my Achilles heel.
I always feel like style is more a result of, it's a negative result. It's kind of, you find your style because of what you can't do.
Yeah.
Did you find, well, you started out with a collection. I'm curious to, as someone who's bogged down in a novel, your stories, I can, there's a Manuel Gonzalez voice that carries over, but I felt in the stories for the most part there's a certain coolness to the narrative in a certain way, but I felt the novel is really unhinged in a really fun way, and like I think one of the I read it again, since my sense was that you were having a lot of fun, and I'm just curious to hear about your kind of movement into the novel. And did this start as a short story? Like how did it go?
No, it didn't start as a short story. It's there's a section that I started writing that's not in the book, but it was in the book for 7 or 8 of the 9 or 10 drafts that I wrote. And it's about this character, Henry, who is referenced in that section that I read, but he's all like Men in Black, kind of suited up, and he goes to collect this girl we discover is Rose at this detention center, and he has the spiel of like, I'm going to tell you a story, and this story is your story, and this is how your life is about to change. And he's smooth and kind of handsome and charming, and he's got all of the, but she doesn't give a shit, and she just smashes his foot, shoves him out of the way, and tries to escape, because that's basically what she's been trying to do all the time. And I didn't know where it was going. I was just having fun with this guy, and chasing after her. And while he was chasing after her, he was thinking about all the paperwork that we would have waiting for him at his office if he let her get away, and how all the guys back at Regional wouldn't let him live it down if this like 15 or 16-year-old girl got the better of him. And then I was like, oh, Regional, that's where everybody is. This place called Regional. And I bet it's an office, so I'll just call it Regional Office. And I was also very disaffected with my job at the time. There was this writer, Alistair MacLeod, who was a Canadian writer who just recently passed away, well, I guess maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. But he said that writers write to their worries, just even if they're not aware of writing directly to their worries, that they'll look back at their work and they'll see, oh, yeah, that was the time that this was happening. And it's very clear on the page now. But I was very disaffected with the job that I had. I felt like I was doing a bad job at it, and I felt like I was really just unhappy. And so that guy Henry, he ended up also being unhappy working for Regional and recruiting these girls, and how they kind of all began to look the same, and he wasn't sure that he was doing the right thing anymore. And so he took her to Regional, but he left. Like, he put her on the elevator, told her who she should ask for, and he just started walking away. But he started worrying too about what would happen, because you don't just walk away from Regional. And I mean, as soon as I wrote that, I knew that it was true. You don't just walk away from Regional, but I had no idea still what Regional was. And so he was wondering who Regional was going to send after him. And he figured that it would be this woman, Sarah. and I didn't know who Sarah was, but her name just appeared, and it said Sarah with the dark hair, and then Sarah with the mechanical arm. I don't know where the fuck that came from either. But as soon as it was there, I was like, oh, someone in this book has a mechanical arm. I know exactly what world I'm in, and this is going to be fun. And I just kept going. But it wasn't, like, it took a long time. It didn't take a long time to write the first draft, but it took a long time for me to make the novel that worked the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, in kind of more imaginative fiction, it seems like there's less rules in a sense. You can do anything, but I also feel like that is terrifying, and that I actually think the kind of speculative or imaginative fiction, actually, the rules have to be firmer. They have to have you have to have a sense of boundary and constraint.
Right.
And, your book kind of almost builds a whole mythology around this regional office. There's one of the narratives in motion is an actual history of the regional office while we're watching it occur. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but like when do you know, in a sense, to put on the brakes? When do you kind of feel that, like, the reaches of the boundaries that you need to work within?
It's kind of by feel, really. I don't know. I don't really push too far beyond what I would accept. Like, I don't push farther than what I would accept, and I feel like if it's beyond what I would accept, then it won't work with anybody else. But I also just I'm familiar with a lot of the tropes, and I kind of wanted to keep it within those trope boundaries, but then try and find ways to subvert them. So I wasn't pushing beyond those original boundaries, but I was, like, especially with the stories. With the stories, it's a little bit easier to quantify or articulate, but I think there's a story where there's a guy who gets a unicorn from a flea market, and his friend from high school, hates him because he now has this fucking unicorn, and he doesn't have a unicorn. But also I wanted to think, well, what would it really be like if you had a unicorn, and what would a real unicorn actually look like, especially if you bought it from a flea market outside of Houston. And it was a thing that, you have the idea of what a unicorn would inject into your life, which would be fantastic and amazing and full of rainbows, but I would also think, it's probably a pain in the ass. It probably would cause a lot of jealousy and strife, and probably tear friends apart more than bring them together, as any bright, shining, interesting thing tends to do. And that probably would stab you in your chest if it had a chance, which is what happens. Yeah. But I didn't do anything beyond, like, just set a unicorn in a realistic story. But then once I did, I gave it physical weight and gravity so that you had to maneuver around it. It wasn't just a thing there that was a metaphor. And I think anything that I put in the novel, I thought of it in the same way. If it's going to be there, it has to do work. It has to have a weight and a physical quality and concreteness to it that your characters have to maneuver around, they have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Sarah has a mechanical arm, but I made it so that it's a mechanical arm that nobody can tell which arm is the mechanical one, because that's how they made it. And there's a bet in the office about whether she really has a fucking mechanical arm, because nobody's seen her use it, and nobody really likes her, and they keep telling her to change the office toner in the copy machine, and blame her for the interns when the interns fuck up, and she's like, I'm not the intern manager, that's Carol. And nobody cares. And so that's like when you have something, sometimes when you have something that should separate you in this interesting and amazing way, it does the opposite. And so that's whenever something magical or fabulistic is entered, then I try and think, what kind of a pain in the ass would it really be like to have a mechanical arm?
It's almost like the opposite of fantasy, actually.
Right, yeah.
Mundanity? Is that
yes, I think I don't know, we'll have to look in the dictionary.
Don't use it.
I think mundanity is a word.
Your two protagonists, our main protagonists, are young women. What is your obsession with young women? If you want to talk that, or
That's been heavily documented.
I guess your the angst of youth, I think, is especially in the Rose sections.
Right.
The two protagonists have the narrative styles are very different. Rose is very vernacular and loose, and Sarah is much more quiet and
She's a bit buttoned up.
So and these characters seem to come to you naturally. But like, what at any point were you diving into your own teenage angst, rebellion?
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, for Rose, often it was like the angst and rebellion that I never actually enacted when I was a kid, because I was a very good kid. Like, there was one night in my entire life growing up that I snuck out of my parents' house, and I ended up just walking around the park for maybe 20 minutes and then snuck back into my parents' house. And so Rose was the antithesis of that person. Mm-hmm. She's more like how I am now, in that I don't give a fuck about things. But she also, I drew on a few people that I knew growing up and who I've become friends with since. And then also a type of young woman that I ran into frequently. I lived in Paris, Texas, which her shitty town is based on, and I taught high school for a year, and there was just something about a small town, northeastern Texas, shitty little town that infected her voice and like other voices of women that I knew. And there's this one woman, I doubt this will ever get back to her because she lives in Paris, Texas. Her name was Rochelle, and she worked for my friends who owned a bakery there. And she was like the meanest, grumpiest woman who was like, well, I break my husband's nose again last night. And then she would tell you the whole story. It'd be a hilarious story where she was like wrestling with her husband and then broke his nose. And then she I got arrested again last night because I was driving home drunk, but I knew that was the wrong thing, so I pulled over on the side of the road, and sure enough, some fucking cop came and was like, what are you doing on the side of the road? Well, I'm drunk, I don't want to drive home, and then they arrested me. And I'm like, yeah. And that story's in there, almost verbatim. So that's where a lot of Rose came from, and Sarah... yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I just had a feeling with her that she would be... Well, her mom is abducted when she's very young, and she doesn't know what happened, so that has to affect you, I'm sure. Not having had my mom abducted when I was very young, I can't say specifically, but empathy. I enter the shoes of a character. But yeah, I don't know. Just the fact that I already, as soon as I approached her, there was a point where I had her wonder whether she had a mechanical arm or not, because even she couldn't tell which arm. She knew which arm was the arm, but she couldn't see the difference because that's how good the technology was. That kind of built the character that came out of it, just that uncertainty and doubt. And questioning.
Yeah. Maybe one more question, then maybe we can ask the audience.
Oh, sure.
Are there... you've gotten to the end of 2 books now. Are there certain things that you realize you're kind of writing about only after you've done it? Certain subjects that come up, obsessions.
Well, apparently, young women.
Or that, and also, what do other people see in your fiction that you didn't notice you were doing? Because I think you kind of operate at a certain level that you may not even actually know exactly,
right.
all the stuff that's there.
Yeah, no, people see stuff in my fiction that I am very surprised by, often. because I have a very specific idea in mind. Well, often I'm not worrying about what this means or that means, because that gets in the way of me writing the story that I want to write. Like with that unicorn story, somebody asked me, what is the unicorn really? I was like, a unicorn. She was like, yeah, but what is it really? Like drugs, sex, slave trade, what is it? I was like, it's a fucking unicorn. It's just, when I wrote it, it's a unicorn. When I read it, it's a unicorn. It's just, to me, it's always a unicorn. And she was very unsatisfied with my answer. But I'm fine with other people thinking whatever they want to think about it. I did have somebody tell me that after they finished reading it, he was on the plane when he was reading it, and he finished reading it, and immediately when he landed, called his mom to tell him how much he loved her because of the book. And I was like, that's not a reaction I ever would have. But Sarah's mom is abducted, and you find out what happened to her, and there is some very sad things about that. But it's not the thing that I am always thinking about when I think about the book. I find that in this book, especially, the thing that I kept coming back to is what happens when you get what you want and it's not what you thought you wanted, and then you're stuck with it. And then also just it's shitty to be in charge of people. Those are my themes. So in English class, they'll call me what is the theme of this novel? I'll be like, it's shitty being in charge of people. Being a manager of shit is awful. Because nobody does what you want them to, and you're responsible.
Being a dad, too.
It's like being a dad. Being a dad's easier than being in charge of people when you're me. Because I'm bad at organization and administration, and telling people how to do things. And money.
Yeah. Many things.
There's a lot of things I'm bad at. This is one of the few things I'm good at, people.
With that, does anyone like to ask Manuel a question?
Yeah, Eliza.
Do you have any idea when you know a character has kind of crossed from a sketch into actually having life? Is there and sort of just some way of gauging when it gains enough weight or depth, or when it takes over the voice, or anything you can say?
Yeah, it's when that character takes over the voice is usually when suddenly I'm like, because Rose did not sound like she does when I was first writing her. She sounded more just a regular third-person narrative, and now if you read through it, you'll see she's got a mouth on her, and she's contrarian, and she is full of bravado and insecurity, but it took a while for me to get her to that place, and it was just a lot of writing scenes with her and putting her in situations and seeing how they played out. And then also with this book, there was a huge rewrite at the very end of the process where I took everything, I wrote a new beginning, 3 pages or 4 pages, and it made everything else look like shit. Horrible writing. And so I threw it all away and started over. And so, but after having spent almost 4 years with the characters in the world, and so jumping right in, I jumped right in with the voices of those people because I'd had it for so long. But it's just a lot of time, and making them do stuff is what, clean my room, and the Rose would be like, fuck you. Except for then I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to clean my room either. That just went to a weird space. What? Another question? Yeah.
I was wondering about I was noticing in the excerpt you read about the bureaucracy versus the fantasy. And I was wondering if you could the banker's boxes, the organization, kind of. Then you also talking about how you came up with the title back at regional. Right. So I was kind of curious. You talk about being bad at organization and management, but somewhat a theme that I noticed was kind of the idea of management and kind of just being a middle manager, but also fantasy. I was wondering, I don't know. I want to know where that kind of came from.
Yeah, well, I feel like whenever I have whenever I have a situation, I always push it to its like logical or its illogical logical end. So of course, if there's a regional office that does this world-saving stuff, they also have to have accountants, and they have to have like a system of organization, and they have to like, because that's how things run, and you can't get away from them. And in this book, I thought it'd be fun to actually dig into like what is there's a whole middle section that's because it's fronted by a travel agency, the Morrison World Travel Concern, and they're taken hostage like when the attack first happens, and that whole middle section is just with the hostages, and it's all about like petty office bullshit that happens, and also they're trying to escape or not be killed, but they're like, they're just office people, and you're stuck in a room with the people that you really only can tolerate for like 8 hours a day in an office, and now you're stuck in a life and death situation. And so when there's nothing to do and people are worried about what should happen, and they're trying to break the ice by saying, well, maybe we should play a game, then of course there are going to be people behind that person making faces like, oh, fucking Laura and her fucking games. Or like, how many times is Bradley going to tell us about the square dancing class that he's taking in Bushwick? and so like I feel like that makes it more of less of just a surface like action kung fu assassins thing. That stuff is fun, and I want it to be there, but I wanted it as a way to get into the stuff of being in an office and just being a person. And then also I've had a lot of administrative jobs, all of which I was bad at, that I can't let go of. Like I can't unlearn all the things that I was bad at doing. And whenever you turn in like receipts for reimbursement, you have to put each receipt on its own blank piece of paper, and like put it in files and give it to them, and then they'll give you your money back. So I figured that she would do the same thing in a spreadsheet. How else are you going to keep track of it? Did you have a still question?
I was going to ask you, does your speed change when you're writing more of an action sequence? Like when I'm reading the novel, I'm in the middle of it right now, it's really, really fast paced. And I don't know if do you physically feel yourself writing faster as you write a more energetic scene? Or do you kind of stay at one pace through like, whether it's a quieter short story or like a more rambunctious novel?
I think it has less to do with what's going on in the scene and more to do with how easily I can see it. And so some of the action stuff, it took me a lot of laboring over to figure out how to write it in a way that made it interesting to me. And then some of the scenes of just character stuff, I could see it very clearly, and it was just really easy and fun to write that. So it's more like how accessible it is to me while I'm trying to write, more than like the action of it. That would be funny though if I could do that. If I just like smoke would be rising, and Sharon would look. My wife Sharon would look in and was like, "Must be a nail biter." That's how she speaks. It's not at all. Any other questions? Yeah, Josh.
We've never met.
Oh, yes, gentlemen.
I was curious, you mentioned you have children.
I do.
Yes. Do you watch garbage movies with them? Are you passing on the torch that your father to you?
I'm watching movies with them that aren't yet garbage movies. Like I was trying to get them into excited to watch that old what's his name? The Thomas. He was in Elliot in Henry Thomas, the Cloak and Dagger.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I was describing it to them, and they were like, So I think what I will be doing, because they're still at the age where, and we are in the era of limiting screen time for the kids. So, but soon it will be a situation where I will just be, and it's starting to be, I will just be in the room with the TV, and the TV will be turned to what I want it to be. And if you want to sit down and watch it with me, fucker, then do. And what are we watching? Oh, Cloak and Dagger. Because it's on HBO Go. But I do watch, like, they really loved The Karate Kid, which I was very happy about because The Karate Kid is very influential in this book. And they love, like, but I don't consider that a garbagey movie. Yeah, genre movie, yeah. And they love genre movies. Like, my son will watch any number of the Star Wars at a drop of a hat, including the prequels, which is I know. I didn't tell them about them. They came home from school one day and were like, "Did you know there are 3 other Star Wars movies?" I said, "Who told you this?" Say goodbye to your friend. Yeah, so I'll watch the things and they like that kind of thing, especially my son a lot. So I'm looking forward to, like, I don't know, like my dad would just always have, like, the Scarlet Pimpernel or Zorro and the Lone Ranger TV show on, and I would just sit and watch, and I would always be like, oh, I want to have a sword. This is the takeaway. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, we saw you guys speak like 3 years ago or so at the LA Book.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you mentioned regional office, and you said, like, oh, I'm working on this novel right now, and you were kind of saying what a pain in the ass it was.
Yeah. Back then it probably was.
It exists today.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I'm glad I instilled so much confidence back then.
What's the deal with that? Why was it hard?
At that time, it was probably at a point where I knew what the problem was, but I didn't know how to fix it. Because there were 2 main problems that my editor and agent and I singled out. The pacing wasn't where it should be, considering what was happening in the story. It felt like it read slower than it needed to be. And there was a barrier of entry into the world. So, like, if you were a fan of Alias and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and La Femme Nikita, the movie, then you would know this world and you would be able to enter it. But if you weren't, I wasn't doing enough work to easily get you into the door so that then you could, decide whether you wanted to stay or not. And it took that didn't come together until until August of, what year is it now? 2014. And I had already, I started writing the book in 2011. So it was 3 years before I got to where I could solve those 2 problems, and I didn't know how. It was the first novel that I felt was worth fixing, and also we had sold it, so I had to fix it. Maybe that's what it was. But I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to. I tried writing 2 other novels, and I spent 5 or 6 years total on those 2 to no end. There was no upshot for that. It's not like I could even bastardize any parts of those to make something else. They were just dead in the water. I just wasted a lot of time, it felt like, and I was worried that that's what was going to happen with this. And I had a number of conversations with my editor about that, about how, what if I really am just a short story? When I first met my agent, I told him I might just be a short story writer, because I tried writing those 2 novels and it just didn't work, and that was a constant thing in the back of my mind, that maybe I couldn't do it, and that's part of why it was a pain in the ass. But look at me today.
Leave it there.
Any other things? Any other questions or things? Anybody want to throw things? Manuel Gonzalez is under attack. Yes.
So do you prefer than writing short stories?
I don't. Now I feel like I can move between both of. I'm working on a new novel, and I'm excited about it, and I'm working on stories, but not as many as I would like to. So I'm hoping that this summer I'll get a lot of writing done. But yeah, right now most of my ideas are coming to me as novel ideas, too big for a short story, and I have to sit and really think about an idea, or think about what would be a good short story idea, and then it will work again. But right now mostly it's my muscles are novel muscles.
Why don't we stop there?
No, I'm going to keep going.
No, we're done. No, so Mike.
He does have...
all those science fiction references, do you just rely on one? Do you use ones that really are part of your childhood and growing up, or do you find yourself doing a lot of research and going down wormholes and learning about whole new works and things that you didn't even know about when you were younger and become work?
No, there's some that are in there that aren't from like being a kid, but I didn't go in like Die Hard is a pretty influential bit of this, but I didn't actually go. I'm research averse. I'm learning averse. If I can just make something up and then go with it, then I usually do, because I'm lazy. And I'm not. I mean, I say that's my shorthand that I'm lazy, but actually, I find that when I start doing research, the research overwhelms the story that I want to tell, and I don't know what to do with all the things that I just learned. I'm like, should I just like plagiarize it all and drop it whole into this story? No, that's probably bad. So I don't really do very much research, and usually just try and sidestep anybody's like questions about, is this real? And then I'll have a character say, this is weird, I don't think this is real. and then the reader will be like, oh, okay, so long as he knows that this is bullshit.
Do you ever worry about your references? Like, do you ever worry, is this going to be too obscure? Like, is this something that, like, Attack of the Trippids or Day of the Trippids, or you don't even worry about this?
No, I don't usually worry about them being obscure, because I am not very esoteric. I'm kind of just like a normal schlub, and like the Day of the Triffids might be like the only thing I have in my pocket that's like, ooh. That's something that only 5 people have heard of. Otherwise, it's like the Black Hole, Lost in Space, it's Die Hard, Karate Kid, Parent Trap, Officer and Gentleman. Those are the ones that
Officer and Gentleman. I didn't think that would be next on the list, but thank you.
Those are the ones. Those are my tools in my toolbox. That's what I got. Coal Miner's Daughter. That's going to be my next novel. Coal Miner's Daughter, but with clowns.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget you can listen to this and all our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.